Awesome. So good evening. My name is Anthony Rodriguez. My speech tonight is going to be on the history of stem cell research. So basically, it's just going to go over a few topics such as what stem cells are, basic history of the stem cells, kind of how they come into play with the medical field, and then some medical advancements as well as the controversy behind them. If you guys have any questions, feel free to hold them afterwards, and I'll be able to answer those. All right. So what are stem cells? They're multicellular organisms that are capable of developing indefinitely into different types of cells. So basically, you have two types. You have your embryonic, and then you have your somatic stem cells. Embryonic stem cells are, you can think of them as children. You know, they're practically babies. The term embryo is in there, so they come from fetuses. Later on, we'll discuss why that's kind of a bit of a controversy. So basically, the biggest difference as to why they're so helpful is because not only do they help in terms of being able to divide into a lot more, but they don't have a specific function yet. So when you have your somatic stem cells, those are going to be your adult stem cells. So for example, you have your myocells, which are muscular cells, and that's their specific function, is to help regenerate muscles and muscle tissue. The purpose of them is to divide and form into more daughter cells, to become new stem cells or specialize with a more specific function. So embryonic stem cells can become something like, say, a muscle stem cell and then transform itself into, say, like a heart cell or a brain cell, if necessary, and that can be used through genetic functioning and genetic mutating. The biggest controversy, we'll hit on that more later, is the question of ethics, because the biggest thing, especially now, is to get embryonic stem cells, you are destroying human embryos. So that's kind of like a big reason as to why a lot of people are against it. And also what kind of stops regulation as well. Embryonic stem cells are very versatile. They do not yet have a specific function. They can manipulate in practically any other cell, as well as somatic stem cells are, again, adult cells that are already having a specific function. So what is an embryo? An embryo is basically defined as an unborn or unhatched offspring of the process, in the process of development. Typically, it's used in human offspring. However, we have used, lab rats a lot, because we're not going to use humans in the lab. You can also coin the term as a fetus. That is the proper scientific term. A quick history. So back in 1868, the word stem cell actually became a scientific term from German biologist Ernest Haeckel. 1981, fast forward about a century, Martin Evans from Cambridge and Yale Martin from UC discovered pluripotent stem cells from mice embryos. So basically, these were the first mice to be used to help regenerate and help kind of heal some illnesses that they had. This is the first time that we were actually able to isolate stem cells as well. In 1986, Andrew Lasar and Harold Weintraub were reporting results of converting rodent fibroblasts into myoblasts. So kind of going back to what I said earlier with this embryonic stem cells, basically how that happened is they were able to genetically mutate that stem cell from being a myoblast into turning it into fibroblasts in the ligaments, and then transform that into a muscle cell, with just a single gene code. Which is, if you think about it, back then, with the lack of scientific equipment that we had, that's huge. Then back in 1989, knockout mice were created. Basically, knockout mice were just they would take out certain genes, and then they would replace them with the stem cells. So let's say you had a mouse with Down syndrome. You can remove that stem cell, remove that cell, and then input the stem cell to have like a better genetic code for that. So back in 1997, Dominique Bonnet and John Dick discovered leukemia comes from the same stem cells that make our blood cells. They're also supporting stem cell cancer research. So basically, we can use that as a way to kind of help lead into stem cell research to help cure cancer. Again, that's still a big thing in progress. But being able to hit on that, especially back in the 90s, that's a really huge advancement for us. In 1998, the first batch of human embryonic stem cells were created from early embryos. So basically, we were able to create embryos from dead embryos and dead embryonic stem cells. Back in 2001, getting a little bit more on the legal side, President George Bush signs authorizations of federal funds on a limited number of embryos. So basically, we're able to get some federal funding, not only from a little bit higher up in Congress as well. And you'll notice later on that Congress kind of has a hold on with the DEA and then every other medical research facility that we have here in the U.S. Also, look more recently, President Barack Obama back in 2016 passes the 21st Century Cures Act. It basically kind of goes against what Bush put in. So it's going to restrict a lot of research on regenerative therapy. So like if you guys remember, any basketball fans in here, what we did is Kobe Bryant tore his ACL, I think it was back in the 2013 season, and instead of being able to do the research here and get healing here, he went over to Europe, and they were able to fix his ACL. Though it wasn't 100%, it was able to put him back in season for another couple of years. So controversy, that was a really big one. There was a lot of research on that as well. So it's really just a big thing of ethics. You know, it's the pro-life debate, really, in a sense, because you're destroying human fetuses for the sake of trying to find a better cure for really anything. You know, at this point, you can heal terminal illnesses with the stem cells, and that's kind of, you get more deep into that, but that's also in terms of trying to argue as well. So we'll stay away from that. The big concern people have in the destruction of embryos is to obtain embryonic stem cells. The caveat to that is the ability to obtain adult stem cells, so that's an alternative, which are more strict in terms of functions and specificity. We can serve the same function. They can also obtain induced pluripotent stem cells, which are just artificially derived from adult somatic stem cells. So again, with the legality, research is not illegal here in the US. However, there are a lot of federal restrictions in federal law that are making it very hard and very difficult to get proper funding for this kind of research. Some of the benefits of stem cell research and the use of stem cells in genetic healing could potentially help treat a range of medical problems, i.e. Parkinson's. We can heal, theoretically, heal Alzheimer's. We can fix other birth defects such as Down syndrome, and then we can also fix spinal cord injuries, fight cancer is a really huge possibility, and then the insight to other basic notions of the body. A lot of cons, though, that you'll come across is that it's a moral thing. We shouldn't mess with human life. A lot of people will try to say that we shouldn't try to play God whenever it comes to healing. And the uncertainty as well. So stem cells aren't exactly 100%. There can be, results can vary with that. So in conclusion, there are many uses for stem cell research. They're good and bad at the end of the day. It's really just kind of what you guys think we should do. So seeing that you guys are the future of what we will become later on, that's your decision as to how we want to improve that. If we want to go ahead and use embryonic stem cells and risk potentially destroying other embryos to better the health of our Americans, or if you guys just want to find other alternatives. That will be my presentation. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to ask. You can go ahead and cut it. You can cut it.